I just wanted to cover some definitions on my channel. When I talk about food, I'm talking about something that is raw, unprocessed, in other words, molecularly intact, and biologically appropriate. And I cannot emphasize the biologically appropriate part enough. The definition for biologically appropriate is what is encoded into your genome. Since each human, with the exception of twins, although enter epigenetics, and that will change, each human is a perfectly, extremely, exquisitely unique set of genetics. Every recombination is different. When you have three brothers and two sisters and they all look differently, different heights, different, some got more of mom's side, some got more of dad's side, came out looking exactly like great Aunt Selma or whatever. That's how many unique genetic codes there are on the planet, which means that's how many ideal diets there are on the planet. So right now there's somewhere around 7.5 billion people. I don't know what the actual number is because every organization gives something different. Sometimes it's 7.3 billion, sometimes it's 7.6, sometimes it's 7.4. I don't know, somewhere around there. That's how many ideal diets we have on this planet. And because genomic sequencing and the definitions or the matches or the I'm struggling to find a way to say it, but basically what nourishes and uplifts one person may not be ideal for another. Coconut, for example, is a fantastic food as far as plants goes. It's unique, it has saturated fats in it, and special saturated fats with medium chain fatty acids. Is a phenomenal, extremely nourishing, extremely efficient food for humans. There are some humans who just can't tolerate it. It's not beneficial to them. That's an example of where things would diverge. The most common overlaps for humans are going to be raw mammals. I mean, raw mammal meats and eggs and marrow. So, bison, cattle, goats, sheep, deer, elk, rabbits. There are very, very few people on the planet, science will bear out someday, that do not respond very well to these when they are fed, preferably wild, so they can modulate their own diet. But if not wild, then at least fed living, growing grass as much of the year as can be provided. And preferably a large variety. I mean, a pasture should have 100 different varieties of forages in it so that the animals can choose the ones best for their current health scenario, health status. In addition to that, there's also bird and fish meats and seafoods and eggs. So roe, caviar, avian eggs. I'm sorry, I don't want to get the eggs caught up in here. We're going to focus on the meat. Bird meat, fish meat, shrimp, crabs. Most people, not as much as land animals, not as much as ruminants, but most people can handle these foods. Fish meat, fish organs, bird meat, bird organs, and then lower down the scale are going to be avian eggs. I feel like most people can handle them, but because they're not supremely abundant in nature, eggs are sort of more of an opportunistic food in nature for hunter-gatherers, whereas meat is on the menu practically all the time because there's always something running around, scurrying around. Those are going to be nourishing for most people. Reptiles, amphibians are going to be a little less often biologically appropriate, just due to the different nature from our set of species. Uh, they're just so different from mammals. And then way down later is our plant foods for the most part. And those are going to be very specific to your genomics. So those in their raw, unprocessed form are matched to your DNA, matched to your genome. Some other definitions on regarding our diet. Synthetics are going to be anything that has not been produced through a growth process. How long does it take you to grow a cow? How long does it take you to grow an ear of corn? How long does it take you to grow a jackfruit tree? How long does it take you to grow spinach or fish or shrimp? These things are life itself. They are alive. Even when you kill that cow and you cut the steak off of the cow, that steak is still alive. That's why it stays fresh and whole for weeks in a fridge. It's a living food. As soon as it starts to die and the cells can no longer look after themselves, that fish or that animal, now the actual flesh, that portion of the animal is dead, and it's been converted into whatever is decomposing it, breaking down its elements. So usually bacteria, probably not so much virus and phages, sometimes fungi and yeasts, but typically that's only under very specific circumstances. Mostly it's bacteria breaking these animals down. When you cook a food that was molecularly intact, loaded with biophotons, enzymes, minerals that are ionically bonded, fats that are ionically charged, a living portion or creature, once it breaks down, is now other creatures. And I'm sorry, when you cook it, go lay down, puppies. When you cook it, you turn that chunk of food into a chemical fabrication plant. So instead of having vitamins, minerals, hormones, enzymes, biophotons, now you have chemistry. It's still a form of biochemistry, but the heat catalyzed reactions in there. You catalyzed the catalyst is synthesis happening. You are forming Maillard compounds. You're forming heterocyclic amines, lipid peroxides, and acrylamide. You're forming advanced glycation end products. These aren't just big fancy words. These are the things that most of you, 90-some% of humanity, is forcing their poor biological earth suits that they call bodies and their poor children and infants to digest and convert from toxins, carcinogens, into energy all day long, 24/7, 365 days a year. Do you have any idea how hard that is on the body? So when I talk about food on my channel, I'm talking about raw, biologically appropriate foods. When I'm talking about toxins, I will be talking about the 80,000 synthetics, literally, that we have invented. You could say advented, but invented is probably a safer word. In the last 5,000 years, as well as cooked foods. We are the only creatures on the planet who cook our foods And the only animals that consume such things, other than in forest, fire, volcanic situations, animals do not eat cooked foods. But they have, how many analogous body parts does a lion or a tiger or a bear or a wolf or a fox or an orca, how many of them do they have? Do they have hearts, livers, lungs, gonads, um, mammary glands, a brain, hypothalamus, eyeballs, a nose, limbs, bone marrow, blood, pancreas, spleen, appendix, spinal cord? I mean, are you seeing the pattern? Are you seeing how similar we are? Why is it that humans need to have cooked foods when most animals in nature only become ill or die due to either depredation, territorial fighting, pollutions that we introduce, or old age? It is very rare in the rare areas themselves that haven't been completely inundated with pollution. So I'm not talking about the Mississippi, I'm not talking about the Gulf of Mexico, I'm not talking about the River Thames, I'm not talking about the Great Lakes, I'm not talking about the entire fucking Pacific Ocean. Thank you, Fukushima. Thank you, Zion. Whatever. But the rare areas that aren't loaded with those things, you don't find diseases in animals. The only natural time for diseases in nature is paring down overpopulation, which itself is a part of nature. You will get booms and busts in nature because of climate factors. When the climate's just like this, it gives that species an advantage. When it's just like this, it gives that species an advantage. And then they blow out of proportion. And then if there's not a sufficient predator available for them, which usually there is, that's how things work. And then you get a predator boom cycle and bust cycle. When that's not the case, then disease will come in and wipe out, I believe, and I could be wrong here, but this is pretty likely based on my observations. Then you'll get disease, a microbe to come in and do what microbes do, which is to balance the entirety of this planet out. When you have a red tide, you're seeing bacteria doing their thing. When you have a mass die-off of animals in a pristine climate, you're seeing bacteria balance their thing. When you get an infection and skin full of pus because you live entirely on fast foods and sugar, you're seeing bacteria and microbes bringing the system back into balance. Whether that's pleasant and swift or rocky and brutal and takes a long time, that depends on the particular conditions of the situation. For a long time, all that was happening in my body was microbes were getting out of control, cleaning up all of the filth that I was shoveling into myself. But they had nothing to rebuild. There was nothing to rebuild the tissue with that they were breaking down. Until I got into raw foods, juicing, raw meats. Then there was solvents from the plants to break down the tissue and to balance the microbes and clean things out, carry things away. And the animals were there to build the tissue back up. So one's the cleaner. The plants are great at violently flushing out your biology, but you need raw animal fats, proteins, meats, eggs, marrow to build your tissue back up. That's all I've got for time on this video. More to come.